Hello again. Yes, today we are continuing in on our discussion of Romans 1, how God's displayed his glory in creation so that we are without excuse of knowing who God is and just how glorious and creative and powerful he is. And today we are going to be focusing in last time we talked about the beauty. Today we are talking about the order and precision that he has in his creation. We are going to read again verse 18 of Romans 1, for it says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth." The truth of what? The truth of God's glory. For what can be shown about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them, for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. And last time we were talking about the beauty that God has in his creation through, and my example was the sunset that I like to watch, and I just like to rest in his beauty. But God's creation is so complex and so detailed that when you look at it in a micro sense of any creature, you get to see just how thorough God is in his design, but precise to give each animal exactly what they need to be equipped to do what they are doing. And by doing that, God is showing his provision to them, but also just the power he has to be able to do that for every animal all over the world. And so today we're talking about the European green woodpecker. This is a really interesting bird, as woodpeckers, as most of us know, woodpeckers are the birds that come up and go, and these birds, every time that they hit their head against a tree, they're looking for worms, they're looking for wormholes. But every time they hit their head against the tree, that's several hundred G-forces going to their brain. But it's being protected right at the behind their beak by a very large, thick padding of cartilage that help protect from getting concussions. Every time they look before they strike, they open their eyes, they close their eyes, they hit, then they come back, they open their eyes, look again, they hit. They open and close their eyes each time that they go for a strike, because if they didn't, they kept their eyes open. It says that from the scientists that if they kept their eyes open, the G-forces would be enough to pop their eyes out. And you've never seen any blind woodpeckers, at least I haven't, and so you can see how they're really good at what they're doing. But once they get to actually making a hole, they have to get the little grub out of that hole they made. And what God did was so interesting. What an interesting solution to this problem is that they have tongues that can sometimes be almost the entire length of their body that go down into these holes to find the worms. And these tongues have barbed ends and glue that stick to the bugs so they can spear them, stick them, and bring them back in. But that glue doesn't stick to their beak, and their saliva is also able to dissolve that glue so when they swallow the bug, they don't get choked. But their tongue being so long, the tongue can't just go back into their throat like any of us. The tongue actually starts at their throat, goes behind their neck, out the back, under the skin of their head to connect to the nasal cavity. That actually then goes back around in some of these, back to the throat, then out the mouth and down into the hole to get these grubs. The bugs that they are getting are so deep into the hole that they need to have their entire head be part of their tongue system. And each of their foreheads have a small little elastic bands that connect to the tongue so that when they retract it, it doesn't bunch up, it never has a problem. And God has really just shown how creative he is in that, because, who if they were to get a hole open but weren't able to get a bug, then there'd be no reason for them to peck. If they had long tongues but weren't able to get to the bugs in the tree, then there'd be no reason for them to have the long tongue. But God has given them both, and he designed them in a way to be exactly suited to get these bugs, unlike any other bird. God's revealed his wisdom not only in the big things, but also in the smallest details that each animal needs to survive, just like the woodpecker. So I encourage you this week to get away from the distractions, like I said before, to get out, and while you're spending time worshiping God and how big and glorious He is, when you look up to see His glory, also look down into the details. Look at the bugs, look at the plants, look at the animals, and hopefully you'll see a woodpecker. But if not, just see how intricate each animal is and how perfectly specialized God has made them to complete their purpose and to display His glory in every single day. So that's just my encouragement. I really hope that you are able to spend some time just outside in prayer and be able to explore God's creation. Have a good day.